time we'd talk to you, we'd be hopefully in a better mood because the Wild. I think it was about a month, but actually I think it was before the Four Nations Championship.
It was right in the heart of the season, and we were hoping next time we'd talk, it'd be summer and we'd still be playing. We get a parade in St. Paul tonight with the Frost,
Yes.
and I mean this sincerely. I do think in the coming years there's going to be a run or two. I think this team is set up with their core to have a chance to have some special things. It's been tough, right? Like, listen, I've covered the team for 19 years. I got there after the magical run of 2003. The best I've seen is a second-round matchup a couple different times. We're all craving the same thing here. We're all on the same page. We want to see this team make a run at a conference final, make a run at a cup. I do believe with Kirill here and this core, it's going to happen.
Did you see the ricochet shot we caught in the Chargers release video?
How about, it's bad.
You can't
Honest
make
to
that
God. NFL schedule release, and we're taking strays from a team that's never won an effing Super Bowl. Are you kidding me? By the way, I have to say, all that being said, it was brilliant.
It was.
I hate it, but it was brilliant.
They didn't do that to any other. There weren't like any other real Easter eggs that I saw that came out of that video.
We caught a real stray. I love the way you guys put that. It hurt too, because what are you going to say?
Yeah, there's no defense.
No, and it was good. I give them credit.
The only worst hockey stat out there I've heard since is that the Toronto Maple Leafs have only won 2 more playoff series since 2004 than the Buffalo Sabres, but the Buffalo Sabres haven't been in the playoffs since 2004. So I think that one's personally worse than...
Yeah, well, especially when you're in Toronto, right?
Yeah.
Where they've had these superstar players now for the better part of 5-6 years, led by Austin Matthews, one of the best goal scorers on the planet, and every year it's the same thing. And now this year the conversation leaving the Maple Leafs playoffs setback is the pressure cooker that Toronto provides. And I do agree. It's different playing in Toronto. And I give Paul Maurice and some of the guys in Florida credit for coming out and saying, in Sunrise, nobody knows us, nobody bothers us. I get it. But still, if you're Toronto with that roster, they haven't done enough, to be honest, with what they've had to work with.
And they're in their window now.
This is it.
They have been in win now for a long time, and they haven't even, which just makes me scared as a Wild fan.
Right.
What if this is our window opening up and that's the best it gets?
There's no guarantee in this league, and you watch the playoffs and you understand how fickle it is, because all of us are hardcore hockey fans. You tell me a point of the regular season where you thought Edmonton would be where they are right now. Nobody would. Listen, they weren't defending. They weren't getting goaltending. They looked like a tired team. They stumbled into the playoffs. They probably could have been beat by LA in that series, if not for a couple of gaffes by the Kings at critical moments in a couple of those early games. And now here they are looking like a juggernaut. And they're doing it without their best defenseman. Now Hyman's hurt, and they just keep rolling. And I think the message is this. Hockey is one of those games where you just have to get in and keep getting in, and then at some point you got to get hot. You got to get on a run. Edmonton's doing that right now. We've seen Florida do it these last couple of years. But again, it is a fickle game when you get to the playoffs.
Yeah, I even think back to that New York Rangers team that at the deadline went out and got Patty Kane, which I know he's not what he used to be, but then they loaded up to the max and they got bounced in the first round. Colorado, they made some pretty crazy roster changes this year. Right when you thought it was going to pay off, they get bounced in the first round. You could do everything as a GM and as a coach and whatever and still get bounced, which is there's nothing guaranteed. I mean, same in the NBA, NFL. It's hard to win in major leagues, and you just hope that you have a shot at it.
Well, I think the one thing I've learned all these years watching teams make cup runs is it doesn't happen by accident. There has to be a star player. We talked about this when we had that conversation over the winter. When you have that guy or a couple of guys, and I think the Wild do right now with Kaprizov and Boldy, when you have superstars at the top, cup runs seem to find those type of guys. So I guess we shouldn't be surprised that back-to-back years Draisaitl and McDavid are in this position, because the Cup just has a way of finding those type of teams. And for many, many years, going back, look at where the Wild were after Marian Gaborik. They had some really nice players. The Suter and Parise additions were huge for this organization, but they never had that guy. And I think they have the guy right now in 97. I think 12 is on his way to being that Draisaitl, that Batman and Robin that you have to have. And now you build around them. And right now, they've got some good young talent assembled.
Can you believe that we've reached the end of cap hell? Because I remember the first time I heard July of 2025, I was like, that sounds so far away.
It did.
And it's here. Almost here.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll never. It's one of those moments. Again, I'm a hockey guy, but where were you when the whole thing went down as far as the Suter and Parisi signings? We thought we might get one. And we're flyover country, and who wants to come to Minnesota? And all of a sudden, we end up getting both. It was 4th of July. It was 2012. Ironically, I was golfing with Timmy Laudner and our two gals. We're out at Chaska Town Course having an awesome time. Beautiful day, and my gal's getting on my case because I keep looking at my phone. I'm like, I got to just see if we're going to make a move here. I think we're going to get one of these guys.
Yeah.
And then I go running around the golf cart like a child. We got them both. And then you look at that 13-year deal, and I think that, to me, as great as that moment was, and awesome to have those guys come to Minnesota, it's like 13 years is a hell of a long time.
Too much in any sport.
Yeah, no matter what, you can't do it.
No.
And so this next contract we're going to see with Kirill, and I think it's going to happen early in the summer. You want to have a window here where you're not pushing these guys into their late 30s and early 40s. You want to close that window off a little sooner. I would expect Kaprizov is somewhere around 8 for 120, and then you start, figuring out, are you going to move Marco Rossi? Are you going to have enough money to make a legitimate push at a guy like Sam Bennett? Can you make a trade to go get Tage Thompson? These are the things that are spinning through my mind every single day, every night, because so much of my mood, and I'll admit it, listen, I love my job, and my mood is dictated by how that hockey team plays.
Yep.
And my job, and all of our jobs, the guys that work around the team, are dictated by how they're doing. And I want them to win. I want them to do well. And so this next, 5-6 weeks is going to be gigantic for Minnesota.
Yeah. So I guess, if you're Bill Guerin right now, what are you looking at? What are you thinking? What's your first priority? Your first priority is probably figuring out Kirill, right? Getting him re-signed.
I think.
Or do you think he's juggling all these things at once? I guess I don't even know how that works.
I think all year long he's known that step one was to lock up Kirill.
Yeah.
And, watching the way this season progressed specifically and how much fun this group had, and seeing Kirill and how comfortable he is with his teammates. And then one cool thing I caught late in the year is when the Wild finally were able to get Zeev Boyum up, and whether he was dressed or not in that Vegas series, how much he was following Kirill Kaprizov around the hotel, the practice rink, on the team bus at the same time, kind of soaking up whatever he could get from Kirill. And I found that super interesting. And I think Kirill taking the time to bring him under his wing, number one, shows he wants to be a leader on this team. Number two, it shows he's not going anywhere. And I never thought he was. I told you guys this winter, I was not. And I'm still not. Even though I'm a paranoid Minnesota sports fan, as much as anybody could be, I've never been worried that he's leaving. I think he loves it here. I think he loves the guys, and I think he wants to win here.
Yeah.
So now you get him locked up, and then, Billy's been real open. And the beauty of Bill Guerin, you've had him on the show numerous times, he wears his heart on his sleeve. And if you listen closely to what he said at the end of the year when he did his press conference, is we need to take some pressure off Joel Eriksson-Ek. We need to get a frontline center. So reading the tea leaves and listening to Billy G, that tells me you either go get Sam Bennett or you make some type of trade for a guy like Tage Thompson. The wingers that are out there are really nice players. I love Brock Besser. I love Brock Nelson. Both those Brocks are great players on the back end of their career. They're great human beings. They're from the state. They want to play here. I get all that stuff. But right now, wing should not be your priority. You got to solidify the middle of the rink.
Yeah, for sure, because then there's the question of Rossi. What's your go-to? Would you try to find a way to keep him? I know he got offered, I think, 5 years, 25. He turned it down.
That's the hard part. Gosh,
Yeah.
I think that number was pretty spot on. If I'm being honest, and I think Marco's a really nice player, and I think there's some upside there. You've seen him kind of climb the ladder here, so I respect the heck out of his game, and he and I have a great relationship. And he's always been so kind to all of us on TV, doing extra stuff. But listen, 5 for 25 is about the right number in my opinion. And if he wants more than that, then you're probably going to force the hand of the Minnesota Wild. And so you lean on Bill Guerin's craftiness because, he was backed into a corner with Fiala where everybody knew the numbers didn't add up and there's no way they could have afforded to keep him. And he was able to get Brock Faber in a first-round pick for Fiala. This isn't even that situation. You can hang on to Rossi and wait a little longer and let it play out. But if he's asking for more than 5x5, then I think we have our answer. I think Bill Guerin absolutely is going to try to make that move. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. You just can't take any offer. You have to get something back that you believe can replace something of value. He's a centerman. He's a valuable centerman. He can play power play.
Yeah.
He can do an awful lot of things on the rink. And so you don't just trade him for the sake of trading him. You get the right deal or you hang on and hope you can figure it out.
Every time I think about this offseason stuff, like my head just starts spinning.
Oof.
And then I realize I would not be great at this job.
I'm too emotional.
Which is funny. Yeah, me too. And I'm too much of a homer, but it's like most fans think that they could do the best job at GM.
Of course they do because they all play fantasy.
NHL.
Yeah. They play either video games or they play fantasy sports, and I think they believe it's easy. It's not easy because everybody out there is cutthroat. It isn't just our GM that wants to win. Every other GM
and
wants
the
to
agents.
win. And they
the
all
agents
have
are
an
hard
angle.
asses. I've heard Kirill's agent's the biggest hard ass.
He's tough, but he's doing his job, right?
Right.
Like
100%.
their number one job is to get the best deal they can for their guy.
Yeah.
And if they took the first offer every team gave them, they wouldn't be doing their job. So it's hard to get mad at Rossi's agent or Kirill's agent because they have one singular job, and that is to get the best deal for their guy.
Yeah, and then kind of going back to the July 1st date. I know they say a lot of mistakes are made on July 1st.
Oh, yeah.
So you got to figure out a way to navigate that. Okay, here's all the available players. I don't want to overpay for one of these guys, but what if someone else snags them up and gets them at a price that's worth it?
It's a poker game, really. And
yeah.
If you think about July 1st, look at it a lot like you look at trade deadline. And, if you're Colorado right now and you're watching Rantanen do what he's doing, do you not at some point wonder, could we not have done something different? Honestly, you have McKinnon and you have this guy who's a creature. He's an offensive weapon. And I know the money was going to get tight. You've got Cale Makar. I understand the landscape that they were trying to navigate. I really do. But did you get enough back, and did you make the right moves? Because they made some aggressive deals at the deadline thinking this would be a year they could make a run. And as we mentioned at the top of this conversation, it was over before it began.
And then Rantanen buried them.
Yeah.
It was he literally put the shovel in the ground.
I mean, can you imagine? That had to be so hard if you're an Avalanche fan.
God.
And who's going to feel sorry for them? They won a couple years ago.
Landeskog comes back and everything. It
had all the makings, right? But that was the one series when you looked at all the matchups in round one, and you kind of said, all right, well, one of the teams that's going to lose this series was good enough to legitimately win the Cup. You looked at Dallas, Colorado, and you said, man. And then you looked at that series and said, well, Dallas isn't even healthy. So if this series can get over quick, Colorado should be fine. And then if the series goes long and Dallas starts to get healthy, then look out. And that's exactly what happened.
Yep.
They started getting healthy, and all of a sudden Rantanen got hot, and I mean really hot, and next thing you know, it was out of their hands.
Yeah. So, what do you do if you're so let's say Dallas loses again this year in the Western Conference Finals. What do you do if you're Jim Nill and you've put together the best roster possible, but you can't get to the Cup?
It's got to be tough because
you got to make some decisions, right?
He's done a hell of a job.
Yeah.
And I mean some great moves, like the subtle move of going and getting Mikhail Granlund from San Jose. That was such a crafty move that's paid huge dividends. He's become a giant factor.
I miss him as a Wild still
I do
now.
too. He's
Especially
very solid.
In this series, those first few games. Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like he still got it, right?
Yeah.
He's still got that offensive flair, and he's always been able to score big goals at big moments. We saw it when he was here in Minnesota. But, if you're Dallas, you've got arguably the best goaltender on the planet. You can argue between him and Hellebuck all you want. It's one of those two, in my opinion. And then you've got this terrific roster around them. And, you're looking at a team that, at least with some of their leadership guys, the Sagans and the Bens are kind of coming to the end.
Yeah.
Now, they've done a great job of keeping that roster young. They've got some great players. I mean, they really do. Robertson, Wyatt Johnson, they're all very, very good players. But you wonder, as that window goes, it was wide open the last couple of years, and now that window's slowly starting to close. It again, for Wild fans, just get out of the first round would be great. But, I mean, listen, it isn't easy. None of this is easy. Getting into the playoffs has become hard for a lot of teams. Look at Buffalo. They've been loading up year after year with high-end talent. They've been loading up, trying different coaches, trying different theories. There's no guarantee. You've got to get the right group together at the right time, and then they've got to make it count. And if you're Minnesota, I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, we can look back now and be a little more objective and take the emotion out of it. Vegas is a very high-quality team, and they proved to be the better team in that series. But if you want to look at one play at one moment in time, Gus Nyquist going off sides, listen, I'm going to tell you right now, if that doesn't happen, if he is able to straddle that line and keep the skate on the other side of the blue, or at least touching the blue, and that goal counts, you're going to have a hard time convincing me right now that the Wild don't end up winning that series. And you know what? I know Vegas got beat in that next round, but I will tell you this. I don't know a team in the Western Conference in the last 5 years that's had a better time when they're healthy slowing down McDavid and the Oilers than this Wild squad, because of guys like Jonas Brodin, who don't exist on every roster. So who knows? You can play the what-if game all you want. Listen, the Wild made the mistake. Nyquist was offsides. It was the right call, but I believe that play did flip the series.
That was maybe one of the most heartbreaking moments.
We were all celebrating, right? I mean, Hartman had that cool run on his skates.
We were going nuts in the studio here.
Why wouldn't you? And then you survived the first one where you're like, well, was there
interference?
Right? Like you're sweating it out, and what we didn't know at the time is that those extra minutes that kept piling up as they initially looked at the goaltender interference, and was the puck kicked in, and all the different things going on in the blue paint, that gave their video team on the Vegas side a little extra time to like, hey, wait a minute. Because when you watch it in real time, like a lot of times you'll watch those plays, guys, and you'll kind of go, ooh, that was close. It never even hit my radar when the play happened live. Like, I'm like, oh, that was onside. That was cool. And then all of a sudden, and as soon as they reviewed it again, like, oh, no. Like, you knew they had something, and you're like, oh, my God, this is actually going to be called off.
I'm going to have PTSD on every goal we score now. So I'm like, oh, who knows? It could have been offsides.
Unbelievable. It was painful. God, it still hurts.
And you're right. Like, the double review, which is something you never see.
Never.
I knew that when we lost the first review and they were reviewing for something else, I'm like, oh, we're going to lose this review 100%.
Yeah, for sure.
You don't win 2 reviews.
No, you rarely do. And you gave them time to really verify.
Yeah.
Because that's the game, right? Like, if they're wrong, they're done. And so you knew they had something, and it's a fraction of an inch. But, again, it's a play that if you're an NHL forward, you've got to figure out a way to stay on sides there. And look, Nyquist, I feel bad.
Yeah.
Especially with social media, he took a beating. But that's part of the deal. When you're a player in this league, you have to make sure that you straddle that line. I mean, you teach kids at the peewee level to make sure before you go in, you straddle that line. Even if it costs you a half second, that's okay.
Yeah, better than getting a goal called back.
Right. Especially a goal that might have put you up 3-2 in the series. And it was one of those nights where Minnesota had played so well. They had done so many things right. And then you forget what gets lost in the shuffle is all the drama with Gus playing so great and getting sick and Flower going in, like the emotion around that. It was it could have been, I should say could have been, such a magical night.
Potential.
And it was one of those just letdowns where you're like, and I'll give the Wild credit because going into the next game, I thought, oh, God, like, how do you come back? Like, I was still hurting the next day. Like, how is this going to happen? And they came out and played terrific. It wasn't good enough, but I wonder how that whole psychology would have worked leading in the series, coming back home, having 2 chances to advance. It's the games you play all summer long with the what-ifs. It didn't happen. You tip your hat to Vegas, but you know this team isn't that far away.
When I was at Game 3, that Saturday matinee game, and, we knew that it felt like we dominated overtime. I think we were out shooting them, and it just felt like when they just couldn't bury it, and then they had the power play, I believe, and they didn't score on that, I was like, oh, no chance.
Power play, when you don't get the puck home on the power play, you start to wonder, is this really going to happen?
Yeah.
That's when you start to worry.
Yeah. I was going to say, going back to the Gus Nyquist and the abuse on social media, he could probably ask John Merrill how to deal with it because he caught some of it on that for that overtime play, but everyone was out of position on that overtime play.
What's funny,
the forwards were too high.
There was a couple of breakdowns, and I know Johnny gets the brunt of it.
Oh,
but if you know how the Wild play, and Wes Walls was on with Dan Barrero right after that and did a wonderful job of kind of breaking it down. And truthfully, it looked like it was his guy, but it wasn't his guy. And it sucks. Like that was just one of those bang plays where once you get a little bit out of position as a forward, you can't get back. The defenseman's kind of stuck in between. And then because Merrill gets there at the last second, it looks like, that's his guy.
Yep.
Wasn't even his guy. But, the bottom line is it broke our hearts.
Just sucks. And it would have been nice to go to the second round because if we would have gotten to win one of those games, I would have jumped in the St. Paul sinkhole.
That would have been pretty cool.
A cool celebration. It was like, you remember when when the Bills built their new stadium and there was that big pit where they were building the new one, and every tailgate someone would jump in the pit. We could have done that with the sinkhole.
We'll have to come up with a new one for next year.
We'll just have to create it. We'll just have to hope another sinkhole shows up for next year's playoff run.
The St. Paul sinkhole. That came out of nowhere, right in the right spot, too.
And it was right after the team lost. I'm like, this city hasn't taken enough abuse. But then, you know what? The Frost, they redeemed it.
They did.
I mean, what a win.
Yeah, and they're a veteran team. You've watched them the last couple of years, and I was lucky enough to cover a few of their games this year, doing some sideline work for them on the TV side, and they're great to work with. But the last two seasons had struggled at the end of the regular season, had barely got in, and then they get to the playoffs, and it's like big moments don't scare them. They've got a roster full of veteran players that have played on the biggest stages. You look at Kelly Panic, you look at Zumwinkle, you look at Heisey, and you look at the goalie Rooney. Like they've all been they've played for gold medals. They've played all over the world. This doesn't freak them out, and they just execute in critical moments. They make big plays, and all 4 games go to overtime. And tip of the hat to the Ottawa goaltender who ended up being the MVP of the playoffs, and rightfully so. She was phenomenal. But the Frost were not going to be denied, and so it's back-to-back years. And now expansion hits, so now all these rosters are going to get tested. And they don't have the talent pool yet on the women's side that the NHL has. So these rosters are going to take a significant hit. You're going to have to really overcome losing a couple of key players to both those expansion teams. Bottom line is, though, you're still going to have those stars on the side of the Frost, and they're going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, because you only get to protect 3, right?
Yeah.
So my guess, who you protect, Taylor Heisey.
A must.
I would say Maddie Rooney.
You probably have to have a goalie, right? One of you two.
Can't be a good pool of goalies, and she was phenomenal, especially
she was
in the
so
playoffs. Good. Who's your third?
Well, you got a lot to choose from.
I know.
You do. You got a lot to choose from. You got the Coyne kid who's so fast. You've got that blue line with Steckline. The problem is you have to roll the dice, and you have to look at some of their ages and maybe like a veteran player you can throw out there. Like Kelly Panic's still a really good player.
Yeah.
You might leave her unprotected because she's towards the back end of her career.
Forever.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to protect the younger players that you have, and then you just got to hope, because with every team only being able to protect 3, it doesn't mean you're going to lose a lot of kids. You're going to lose some. You're going to lose some of your players, but you're only going to probably lose in the end 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And you can survive that. You really can survive that. You've got the draft coming up, and if you keep that core together, which they probably will, they just have proven here back-to-back years that with that core, they're going to be in it come playoff time.
Yeah. So jumping back to the Wild, I think this is a topic that doesn't get talked about enough. I mean, people ask Russo about it and whatnot, but who's the backup goalie? Because I don't think it's Falstad.
I don't either. I don't
Especially
think
coming off the injury. I don't like that.
It's a hell of a question, because I think we all assumed by now he'd be starting. And between the injuries and, let's be honest, life in the minor leagues, when you're a high-end guy like that, there's going to be some bumps in the road. And because the last 2 seasons has provided, the Wild with so many injuries, they have taken players time and time again off that roster. So whatever goalie's been playing down there, and Volstad's been the main guy, you're not getting nearly as good a team in front of you. And they've missed the playoffs because of it. Like the Wild have taken a lot of those players and had to use them. So I'll be curious. I think in a perfect world, you let Jesper have his chance one more time to go to Iowa and solidify what he can do. You bring in a veteran goalie that you can have some flexibility with, because in a perfect world, by the time you get to the All-Star break, the midway point of the season, if Wallstedt has shown that he can stay healthy and be consistently good, now you're tempted to bring him up, right? And then you can, use that other guy as a third guy, or you can move that guy at the deadline to a team that maybe had a goalie injury and use him as credibility. So I'm not saying it's Cam Talbot, but there's a guy like Cam Talbot, right? A veteran guy, Jonathan Quick, that type of guy that still has some tread on the tire, that's been in the battle, that's a good, calm mentor type of guy around your young guy in Gus Bus. And then you hope that Wallstedt takes a big step and you can get him up there, and then you ride with those two.
I was going to say John Gibson, because there's been trade rumors circulating about him for about the last 9 years. But another name,
bad call if the number's right. I think the Wild are going to want to probably spend less.
Yeah.
That's because they're going to have to be creative. Faber's contract kicks in. Kirill now is going to get the big deal he deserves. They're going to have to go out and get somebody there. Billy's talked about adding a guy that can play in the middle of the rink to take pressure off Eck in one of those top two spots. So with the monies available, you've got to be fairly creative. But there's a veteran guy out there for sure. They'll find him. They'll secure him. And the cool thing is, the silver lining to all this is, I don't think anybody could have foreseen the big strides in the last calendar year that Gustafsson's taken. He's now legitimately, if you look at the numbers, become an elite NHL goalie. And we had all this pressure built up that Wallstedt had to be the guy. He had to be the guy. He was going to be the one that would take over. And now you really don't have that pressure. You can really take the long road with him and let Gustafsson do what he did. He proved this year that he can play 50 to 60 games. He can hold up. He can get in the playoffs. He can give you a chance to win every night. He's a rock-solid goalie. And I'll go back to what we talked about this winter. The ripple effects of having Marc-Andre Fleury in that locker room, on that practice rink, on the team plane, with Gustafsson in his ear. Every TV timeout, you can watch him come to the bench, and whether it's a joke, whether it's a conversation, a fire-up, a pep talk, whatever, you cannot, I don't think, ever underestimate the impact that Flower has had on Philip Gustafsson.
I got a name, and I think Sarge will appreciate this one. I say we bring in Peter Mrazek.
Yep.
Sign him.
Wow.
Sign him to maybe 2-year deal, because, I guess he's looking to be a goalie one, but he's just – where's he going right now? He's a free agent.
He is.
Do you think he's going to be too expensive to be like a tandem kind of backup guy if you give Wallstedt one more year in the minors?
Well, you look at what you were paying Fleury, you probably want to keep it to that number or less. And, Mrazek's a year older. He's probably looking to go to a team that's going to win a little more often because he's been getting beat up.
Wait,
He's only got beat up in his career.
Right?
Yeah. Wait,
So-
how old is he?
He's got to be late 20s, early 30s, right?
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought.
He's a little further down the line.
Yeah.
Still got some tread on the tire. I've heard mixed reviews with him off the ice. On the ice, he's terrific. Like he could fill that role. You're right on with bang on with exactly the type of fit we're looking for. Will he be a number 2 though? Will he be able to play, 15, 20, maybe on the high end 25 games and be a good teammate? That would be the question I would have.
He's probably been begging to play in the playoffs because he's been stuck in Chicago, and then he gets moved to Detroit.
That doesn't work.
And then that didn't work, and it's like,
yeah. It's a bummer for him.
It's tough.
But he's got the skill. It's a good call. Good call.
Yeah, he was my fantasy hockey goalie.
Well, there you go.
Provided a lot of points, so I got a soft spot for him.
A lot of saves.
Yeah,
a lot of saves.
He's like a beer league goalie. He's like me.
Nobody plays defense in front of this guy.
Yeah, no.
Oh, man. Poor guy.
Seth Jones did for a little bit, but then he jumped ship, too.
He had to leave.
He's been great.
He's been phenomenal.
Unreal.
What a great spot for him to land.
Yeah.
Honestly, what a great place for him to go. He watched this guy. He's always had all kinds of talent.
Yeah.
And now he's getting a chance to showcase that. Big, strong guy. Not much he can't do on the rink. And as the games get bigger, I think his role continues to get magnified. And, yeah, he's been terrific.
Sarge is a Blackhawks fan.
Yeah.
He was talking shit about him like the entire season. And now
he didn't want to play there. I watched a ton of games. You could just
He didn't
tell.
look like he was happy.
He wasn't, and understandably so, 'cause it's been brutal. But
no one would ask about the Blackhawks. Sarge would come in here on a Monday and be like, I'm so fucking sick of Seth Jones. Now Seth Jones is like one of their best players.
Yeah, I know.
He looks good.
Yeah,
he looks really good.
And Marchand
sure
on the
does.
How about that?
being a third liner, like
Well,
he fit right in.
And it's funny. He is one of those X factor guys. When playoffs, come around and the animosity builds up, and you're trying to find players that can play a role, that can get under the skin of the opposition, that are team guys, he's perfect. Literally perfect. And he did an interview somewhere in the second round about his journey. And he said, when I was growing up, he said, I was surrounded by players that were bigger, that were faster, that were stronger. And he said, I realized at a young age, if I'm going to have any chance at ever doing anything, I got to do all the other stuff, and I got to do it better than them. So that's why you've seen him kind of be that antagonist. You've seen him go to the net. He gets beat up every night, pays that price, stirs up trouble, and he's played that role perfectly forever. It's bizarre, though, for a guy, you picture a guy in Boston for so long, and he's been a thorn in the side of that Panthers team time and time again. And now you see him switch sides. It took me a while to kind of calibrate that.
That'd be like trading Justin Jefferson to the Packers.
We don't want that.
No.
Yeah.
Well, we did see it with Brett Favre, right? When he came to Minnesota, it took me a while to get used to that. I mean, legitimately seeing him playing well that first year in a Vikings uniform, it was bizarre. And I can only imagine for the fans in Green Bay how hard that might have been, because forever he was their guy. Forever. Yeah. And the team you hate, I know the Bears and the Packers have their thing, but the Viking-Packer thing has been legit forever. The Vikings have been more relevant than the Bears the last 15, 20 years. To see him come here, that had to be hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I just recently watched his documentary
on
Netflix.
Ooh.
I asked my
seriously.
I asked my buddy who's a Packer fan if he had a statement on it, and he said none of it's true. So
of course he did.
It was all a lie. It was all fabricated.
They're still drinking the paint thinner at Lambeau. Yeah. Good for them.
It was someone else's thorn in the.
It seemed pretty
in the picture.
Realistic, and again, listen, none of these guys are perfect. We all put them up on pedestals, but that got dicey.
That's a crazy documentary.
It is.
I did not realize.
I had no idea when I watched it.
I didn't understand the intricacies of the volleyball arena thing.
You think they're gonna find out?
Yes.
Oh my God, Brett.
Yikes. We thought the Jen Sturger thing was rock bottom.
Yeah.
Boy, were we wrong.
And Stephon Diggs is just trying his hardest.
Now here we go. Now I will say this. The Minneapolis Miracle is one of the most iconic moments in Minnesota sports history. But being the Josh Allen fan that I've been all my life, I love Josh Allen. He's my very favorite player. Even though I'm a Bronco guy and I want the Vikes to do well, Josh Allen's my guy. Seeing Diggs torment my guy Josh Allen, and then now seeing this debacle, and where this, New England was the last place he should have gone, because he is going to run that team. They didn't have far to go. He's going to run them right into the ditch.
Yeah.
And he's already starting.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
He's going to pick up right where Hernandez left off with just absolute debauchery.
Well, and let's remember that anytime you bring in the boats with a football team, things don't end well. And
good point.
Remember that next week, weren't the Vikings playing weren't they playing Steve Smith? And didn't he score a touchdown and do the thing with the thing in the end zone where it was like a boat row? And I'm like, you son of a gun. But, this is not going to end well.
Funny story. I've walked past the actual Love Boat. So down in downtown Excelsior, if you walk down along that you can. There's those two boats that you can.
How do you
rent
know which
out.
one it is?
I guess I don't know which one it is, and even if it was the same one they rented, but from the photos I saw, I'm like, okay, it's one of those boats.
Oh yeah, there's only two, and
not enough disinfectant in the world.
There's not enough out
Just
there.
drop a gallon of bleach from a helicopter like they do with forest fires.
That one got out of control in a hurry, and boy, that season went the wrong way.
Yeah, football players in boats. There's also that famous picture of the Giants with Odell where they're on a boat.
That's right.
And there's a stat around that picture where they didn't ever go back to the playoffs after it, or someone knows there's a stat behind it.
Yeah, because they looked like a team again that was going to just keep on rolling, and then it just went the wrong way.
Stay out of the water. Stay off the
those
boats.
boats, boys.
Stay off the boats. Yurov finally signed. I know there was kind of some questions. I think they were just figuring out like his bonuses.
Yeah, I think, you know what?
People were, of course, Wild fans were like, oh, is he going to go back to the KHL again? And I'm like, no chance he does that again.
Well, I think the big news from this signing is the fact that they're likely going to keep him with the big squad.
Yeah.
So
they have to, right? Because if he goes down to AHL, he can elect to go back to the KHL.
So I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic to see how well training camp goes for him. Preseason games probably matter a little bit more for this kid. And then the culture shock, like, Kirill made it look easy, but Kirill's a lot older.
Yeah.
And he had played a lot longer. And so that transition normally isn't that smooth. He'll help. He'll help in this process for sure. But it certainly is something to watch into camp. And I still think this kid's going to take some time. You're not going to see him just step in there and produce like 97 did. I think it's going to take a year or two, and we're going to have to do the slow cook thing with this kid. So likely a third-line role works. And if he starts to get hot and start to figure some things out, you can elevate him or throw him on a power play. I don't have big numbers in my mind here this first year. I'm not going to come in with those type of expectations, but I do think it is good news, and I think it's a part of the process that the Wild are going to go through right now as they try to continue to cultivate that young talent. Zeev Boyum obviously had a nice go with the USA in World Championships. That's a part of the process. I think you're going to see him really look like a different player into camp next year. We can actually have time to prepare. Coming off the college thing, Faber broke the mold, and it wasn't fair. It looked like a young kid that still needed to figure some things out. The World Championships will help. The summer will help. Coming into training camp, being familiar with the guys, having that time with the club. I think everybody has high hopes for what Zeev can bring, and he has a skill set that, in my opinion, nobody else on that blue line has. This blue line's got good offensive skill. They can skate the puck, but they didn't have that guy. And he's not Cale Makar, and maybe he'll never be Cale Makar, but he's that type of guy that's going to end up quarterbacking your power play for well over a decade, and we haven't had that in a while, and that's exciting.
Ceiling's high.
Oh, God, yeah.
Ceiling's high.
Oh, love him as a player.
Yeah, and with Yurov, I would have thought because Zeev is staying over the summer, I believe, to work and train with the great skills guys and skating coaches of the Wild. I thought Yurov was going to do the same thing, but apparently he's training in Pennsylvania.
Bizarre.
The hell's out there?
I don't know.
Yeah, right? See, you might be doing a Rocky regiment where he goes out in the middle of the woods. He does pull-ups in a log cabin.
Yeah. If he does that routine, he's becoming big and strong.
Really ironic considering he's Russian, but
right.
Maybe he should
the whole Drago thing.
He should go to Drago's gym.
That I would like.
Minus the steroids.
Well, there's that. No, I think at some point, though, don't you feel like he'll come early and get familiar and get to know the guys? I think a lot of the guys nowadays, when you turn the calendar to August, between the hockey that's played over at Edina and that whole racket, which is great. And then you get the boys that are training here in St. Paul, and you start to get, ready for camp. That last month, you'll see them here. They'll all start to kind of come together. It'll be great. I think he is a guy that Wild fans have been waiting to see, and I think patience is going to be something that the Wild fans hopefully bring to the table with this kid, because I don't think you're going to watch him step out there and put up a point a game in the first month of the year.
Oh, Wild fans are going to immediately call him a bust.
Oh, they can't wait to do it.
It's funny you say that because we had a comment.
Oh, no. I'm going to have to, if we trade Rossi, I'm going to have to start saying Yurov's not a bust. I'm going to have to defend him.
Right.
Yeah, the question is, how long of a leash will Zeev get? I'm afraid of another Alex Tuck situation.
I think
it turned out pretty good last
time. Tuck turned out great, and that was, going back to that expansion draft where, again, the Wild had their mind made up, and ironically, it revolved around Matt Dumba and a quarterback in the power play and all that good stuff, and then Dumba had that fight, and ironically with Tkachuk, who we're still talking about years later, and we know the rest. I'll say this. I think Wild fans have a little whiplash because of what happened in that playoff series, and it was a big-time talker on social media. Should he be in? Should he be out? Bottom line is this. He's going to look like a hell of a different player come training camp than he looked like in the playoffs. That was a really hard spot to put him in against a really good team in a really loud building. And, he looked nervous. I'll be the first to admit it. He looked nervous. He looked like a college kid is supposed to look. He's not going to look like that college kid after playing the World Championships and being in for training camp, training all summer with these guys, and then going into a preseason, being able to get acclimated. They're going to build the power play around him. He's going to be the guy on their top power play, and there's not going to be a quick trigger. I mean, they're going to let him figure it out because the stakes aren't nearly as high when you look at October and November as they are when you're in a playoff series where we knew going in there was no room for error against Vegas. It was going to be a 6 or 7 game grinder, and they had to make a decision based on what they had right then and there. It's going to be different in October and November. If you want to use the word leash, whatever, they're going to let him play his way into that spot, and he'll be just fine.
He had to get his, and going back to Boyum, he had to get his welcome to the NHL moment out early.
He got it out of the way.
When I think he tried a saucer pass, and Carlson picked it off and
picked
had
it right out of midair.
Yeah.
That worked in college every time. It worked every time.
Yeah.
Even worked in the World Juniors. That was a brilliant saucer pass for the golden goal.
Yep.
Like, the kid's got unbelievable skill. He's fearless. He's got a swagger to him. It was great to get to know him a little bit on the road in Vegas. I have no concerns. Like, literally, I mean this. No concerns. This guy he's going to be a terrific, terrific player. We got a little taste of it, but he wasn't nearly the player he's going to be. That was just the first step. Got it out of the way. He can blame Brock Faber for how good he looked right away. Different kind of player, though. Brock's not a guy that's going to go out there and take a lot of chances and try to make offensive plays. He can make them when the plays come to him. He's a big, strong guy. He's a valuable guy at the top of your defensive blue line and that top pairing to shut down the opposition. Brock is an unbelievable player.
Plays crazy minutes.
Yeah, he's a minute muncher, right? Different type of player.
Yeah. Well, something I got to go back to that's happened since we talked last was that really cool moment with Marc-Andre Fleury in the last game of the year.
Oh, man.
Eriksson Ek ties up the game against Anaheim with 11 seconds to keep us in the playoffs.
Get us in, yeah.
Turned out we would not have gotten in if we don't score that goal.
How about that?
Which is crazy to look back on. Gus skates over to the bench. Everyone's terrified he's hurt. Tells Flower to get in the game. Flower goes in the game. Plays his ass off with no warm-up. Stacks the pads. Glove save windmill.
It was like a bingo card, right, Jack?
Yeah.
Like he literally covered all the Flower.
Yeah.
Like every one of those, typical, textbook saves we've seen for decades.
Oh.
It was one of those nights where you had to pinch yourself. We had a couple this year with Flower. The one in Montreal stands out, but that game in particular, because it came down to the final few seconds, because X scored, and then I've never seen it where Gustafsson had played great, and he had the foresight to say, well, wait a minute here, why not get this guy in the game? And he's right. It was the right call. And then it plays out the way it did. I know with his family there that night how much it meant to Flower. And it's really funny. Like, going back to when they brought him in, none of us saw it coming. It was one of those head scratchers. Like, really, we're doing this now, okay? And then you see it play out years later and the impact he's had, like I mentioned. But then seeing how well he was able to play, like I almost feel, and I almost feel like he said he was going to retire too soon, because he looked as good to me down the stretch this year as he has in any other year in a wild uniform. Maybe it was his time. Maybe with his family and his kids getting a little bit older, it was his time. But it's funny how much, Minnesota impacted him, because as recent as maybe 12 or 14 months ago, he had built a house out in Las Vegas. He loved it out there, had dune buggies, was going to live out there. The kids were going to go to school out there. That's all flipped. They're going to live here. Yep. He loves it here. And still going to go home, obviously, to Montreal and see family up there. But the kids are going to go to school here. I think the Wild clearly are going to find a role for him in this organization. It's the right call. He's been such a positive impact on all these players, but specifically the younger guys. I'll start with Gus, but it goes much deeper than that. He's one of those, once in a generation type of guys.
Well, I got to pump your tires too, Gorgie, because I thought you absolutely nailed how do you prepare for a moment? Because going out there to interview him in front of the entire arena that's chanting his name in his last regular season game. Like, is that a moment where you got a little nervous and you're like, I got to nail this? Because you did.
I get pumped. I get a little. I have a little anxiety. I don't want to put him in a bad spot. I want to bring out his best. My only thought at that point is to let the crowd do what they're going to do. Minnesota hockey fans are so in tune with moments. Yeah. They get it. And so I knew that if I just let him do the talking, if I can just get him to talk about what it meant to him, they'll follow through. And that's all I was hoping to do. You just don't want to screw it up. And the best thing anyone can do in that spot is to let the guy talk and listen. And, he is so he's done it for so many years, right? Like 21 years in the league. He knows exactly how to bring out his side of things. And the fans are just waiting for a reason to roar. And so it was so cool. And I don't take for granted those moments because they don't come around that often. We had it in Montreal. Done the job now for 19 years. Next year will be my 20th. I have not cried during a game until that game in Montreal. When I say cry, you get choked up, right?
Yeah.
It's like when you're in a movie and you're embarrassed, almost like you're choking up. But that moment in Montreal, I had never seen anything like it. They couldn't drop the puck. And this is a guy that never played a minute for the Canadiens.
No.
And I know, because I've been to Montreal so much, how much they respect keeping the game going. And the fact that ovation went on through a commercial break and was 6-7 minutes long, and the referees literally could do nothing to stop the crowd from cheering, could do nothing to start the game. And in the middle of this 7-minute ovation, the camera guy in-house, in the Bell Center, put a camera on Flower. It was brilliantly timed. He had to go back and start stretching because he was getting cold, waiting. And then he just smiled. That Flower smile, like in appreciation for this moment. I'll never forget it. So we had a couple of those this year where you step back now and say, damn, how lucky am I to have that opportunity to be there?
Yeah, no, you nailed it. It was incredible. And even like when you just thanked him, it like gave me goosebumps. I was like, I'm gonna
miss him, man.
I'm gonna miss him. You see kids with signs that say like, I started playing goalie because of you, and he inspires so many. And
I'll say this, and I think we've talked about this before. Yeah. What you don't see with Fleury, and I mean this, like every time we get to Pittsburgh, every time we get to Montreal, pick a big market. New York's another one. A lot of times it's after a game. So we're flying and we're getting into these particular cities in the middle of winter at 2 or 3 in the morning. And I'm going to tell you, in Pittsburgh, dozens, but most places there's 6, 8, 10 people out there with their wild, Fleury jersey or a poster or a hockey card, and he'll stop. He'll sign the gear. He'll take the pictures. The way he treats people when the cameras aren't rolling. When we got back to Pittsburgh and he's given one of the guys that sweeps up the arena a big hug, a couple of the ticket takers came down to get their picture with him. He is the genuine article. He is as down to earth and as nice and as humble as any professional athlete I've ever covered. And so how do you not root for this guy? How do you not tip your hat to a guy like that that's still a world-class goalie that's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer? But truthfully, what separates him is everything you don't see, behind the scenes. He is a remarkable human being.
Yeah. And it is kind of funny because he didn't even technically retire. He went and played in the World Championships.
That's typical Flower, right? Anything.
I love how he made the joke too about I got sick of my kids after one day of being retired, so I
but that's him.
Play.
He is one of those guys, and I think a lot of people talked about this on social media. We were in Pittsburgh, and we get done, and they have 2 rinks at their practice facility, and so the Penguins had skated before us, and then there was a Pee Wee team that had gone out there, and they're having a normal practice, and the Wild are skating on rink 2, and they have to walk behind rink 1 to get to their equipment room and to change and to hop on the bus and go back to the hotel. And Fleury recognizes that the kids are all pointing and oh my God, Marc-Andre Fleury's watching our practice. And he walks over. I swear to God, he opens up the gate, skates onto the ice in his gear, and it's not a minute, it's 15 minutes. He's in the practice with the team.
Yeah.
They're shooting and scoring on Marc-Andre Fleury. If I'm one of those kids, and I put myself back in the day, right? I'm talking about that for the rest of my damn life.
Yeah, I would bring that up to everybody.
I scored on Marc-Andre Fleury, and he was letting a couple kids score, and they were doing the celly. But then he started trying, and then he flashed the leather, and same thing, double stack pads. They broke the mold, man. I've never seen anything like Marc-Andre Fleury.
I feel like he would sub for a random beer league team.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Like,
especially if he's like gonna stay here now and work for the team and whatnot.
It's gonna happen. You are spot on. Like, we're gonna be sitting there on a cold December night, and all of a sudden at 11 o'clock at night, we're gonna have somebody with their phone out at like SPA Arena over there in St. Paul, and like, wait a minute, that's Marc-Andre Fleury, like, and he's doing the thing, the windmill save and the whole shabam. Yeah, no doubt.
Luongo did that this year, right?
It was cool. And there's another guy that gets it. Like, Roberto Luongo gets it. His presence on social media, you can tell that he understands the impact he can have and the humor he can use.
Yeah.
He's fabulous.
Yeah. Oh, I even think back to Flower during preseason when he went out with the Quick Trip Ice team. I was at that game, too, and I didn't even realize it until after I saw it. I was like...
I was told something was happening, and they're like, hey, by the way, one of the trainers pulled me aside and says, make sure you tell the guys in the TV truck at this TV timeout to shoot this. And so we didn't know what it was. We didn't know who it was.
Yeah.
And so I'm literally in the tunnel behind the wild bench watching the ice crew, and I don't recognize him. I'm like, I don't get this. Nothing's happening. I don't know. And then he finally skated by, and you could hear his voice say, come on, boys, get it going. And you're like, was that him? And then you're like, oh, my God, there he is. Like, what a beauty.
He could be such a jerk for how much he's done in his life. Like, some athletes are like that, you know?
That's not who he is.
And then he just does shit like that. Like,
he just, he's one of those guys that doesn't take himself too serious.
No.
Like, he just doesn't care.
Good lesson for all of us not to take life too seriously, because even at the highest stage, he's still just going into Sid's equipment room and their best player, another Hall of Famer, one of his former teammates, and he's just messing with this
every
guy's
time
day.
He gets every chance. Well, Duhaime found out the hard way, right? Like,
that
you called him a 50-year-old not once but twice on our broadcast. There's a price to be paid, and when it finally came to a stop, he's got traded to the Avalanche, and Flower takes the time to get the wheels off the car and have a set of potted plants in his engine. It might be time to wave the white flag there, Brandon.
Yeah. That story was bananas.
It was awesome.
Like, what that's like a minor inconvenience to like oh my God, I have to like call AAA. He's like, I think Duhaime's like, I don't even know how to put a tire back on. But he couldn't. But yeah, he like hit him somewhere, or he said
he had him. Like,
tires are.
And I don't know how much money he spent, but clearly he had help from the inside on the Colorado side.
Yeah.
And it's funny, we pull in, when we get to the Bell Center, we get to Ball Arena, there's a parking garage right next to the media entrance, and that's where all the players park. It's a nice covered little lot there. And I'm like, oh man, this guy must have spent a lot of money, got the trainers together, whatever part of the staff he used, and he took it to a level there was no turning back. Like,
he's got a deep network.
Who's going to say no to this guy?
Right.
He'll throw you a couple $100, but you're going to be a part of one of the greatest pranks in the history of the league.
Yeah, and like a Hall of Famer, future Hall of Famer asks you to do something, you don't ask questions.
I couldn't say no.
Stand in line, do it.
But again, back to Brandon Duhaime. Like, listen, you could have prevented this by not being a wise ass.
Yeah.
You don't go on TV and call your guy 50 years old. I get what you were trying to do. I understand it completely. And it was funny at the time, and I laughed at the time. But in the end, Fleury was the one that was laughing last.
Yeah.
So that's great.
He's always going to get it last. Another thing, so the X is obviously no longer going to be called the X.
I don't understand what to do here. I watched that video today, and it was really cool. I'm always in my mind going to call it the X. Like, if I'm like talking to my buddies and there's a high school game or a college game, or, hey, I'm heading down to the X, I'm going to work. How do you not? I don't know. 25 years is a long time. It's a lot of habits to break. I don't have any steam, but what are we going to call it?
Well, I said, what's the over-under on number of times you're going to slip up and accidentally call it the X?
Oh, man.
Is this first year going to be rough for you?
For sure. I mean, thinking about it right now, I'm petrified.
Yeah.
That's all I've ever known. And it's such a cool thing to say, like going to the X. X marks the spot.
I know.
Yeah, it's going to be an adjustment.
Yeah, I had a source tell me that Treasure Island was throwing their hat in the ring. That maybe TI Arena. I was going to say I could go to the game a lot and say I'm an island boy, which I'm not even going to try to describe what that is to you, because you probably never heard of it.
No.
The Island Boys.
You're lucky you don't need to.
It's off my radar.
It's a dumb internet thing. A couple of guys. Where did they live?
Florida.
They wrote like a rap song about how they're island boys, and it's one of those dumb internet things.
You can say you're an island boy.
So you could say you're an island boy. Or, I mean, what I said is it'd be kind of fun to be like, let's go to the island, which is, it's it's ironic because it's never like island weather here.
No.
So, like in the
middle
of January, it's kind of a fun like irony joke. Like, all right, let's go to the beach today.
I like the island idea. Like, there's a lot we can do with it.
Yeah.
If that's where it ends up going. Because the beauty of where it was is, hey, we're going to the X. So it's the same thing.
Right.
Meet you in the we'll meet you at the island, or we're heading to the island. That works until the Islanders are in town.
Yeah, that's a good point, because then they could say we own the island.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be tricky if that's the case.
Really would have been cool if Elon Musk bought it so we could just call it the X still. But this time you don't even have to do XL Energy. You just
call it the X.
Save yourself some words.
Yeah, you're right, actually. And
the X Arena.
So yeah, we'll all have to adjust. It'll all be fine once it happens, and we'll figure it out. I didn't drive by there on my way down to the studio. We're in St. Paul tonight. I wonder if the signage is down.
Yeah, because the contract, I don't know if it lasts through June or
this was it.
Yeah,
that'll be weird when they start taking that stuff down.
Where do they? This is gonna be one of those things now where you can probably buy stuff from it when it was the X. How big are those letters?
They're pretty big. Probably, you have a high ceiling here.
This is where I wish I had a dispensable amount of money, because I would love...
It'd be really a cool...
If I had like a big yard and I just put it in the back. Oh, my God.
Well, if you had an outdoor rink, like you had a nice outdoor rink that you used in your backyard and you had that, you could light up in the snow.
Joe Mauer should buy it for his...
He could do it for sure. There you go. Now, I hope he's watching.
The games
Joe,
that he...
Make it happen.
Right? Is it his rink that he has all the
Him
players?
or Morneau?
Morneau, I think, maybe.
Might be Morneau.
I think it's Morneau.
They both have plenty of cash.
It. They should
in fact, if they asked, they could probably get it done today.
Yeah.
You really only need the X letter, too.
That's all you really need, but it'd be cool to have the whole thing.
It would be
up
cool
in the
to have
snow.
the whole thing.
Because we remember driving into St. Paul.
I know.
And seeing that up there for 25 years.
How it like curves around the building.
So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, that building still has it for me. Like, we travel around the league. We see newer buildings. I get that they're going to have to do some things. They're going to add some restaurants and some high-end stuff. But the rink is still pristine. Like, it's in great condition. They've done an amazing job. You walk around there and look at how that building has stood the test of time. I can tell you honestly, there's some buildings in this league that are less than 10 years old. They're not as nice as ours.
Well, and like the Custom One Lounge, I actually got to go in there for the first time. That's super nice.
They're looking to do more of that, and I think that's why they need a little help from the city. They're going to get it done.
Yep.
It's a wonderful meeting place, but they want this building to be updated for the next 25 years, and I get where they're going with this. And now there are just different amenities that teams and people need, and having specifically been to places like Pittsburgh where they have these exclusive ice level clubs where the team walks out like through the club, like it's glass enclosed. So
like the Vikings tunnel is the same.
Phenomenal. Yeah. You guys get it, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of experience people are looking for.
Can't afford any of it, but
no, I can't either. But I'm glad that's where we're trying to get to, because the building as it stands right now is still in awesome shape. Just needs a little, little bell and whistle here or there.
A little tune-up.
Yeah, perfect way to put it.
$900 million.
Yeah, small tune-up. Not like an oil change, but kind of like an oil change.
Yeah, no, it is an incredible building, and it's in the perfect location.
It is.
Like,
I don't want and I know there's been talk if they don't get the money, we're going to move here, we're going to move there.
No.
St. Paul's
Keep
where
it
this
here.
belongs. It's a great location. It's for me, middle of winter. It's a tradition driving to St. Paul. Now all the cool places around there, including Tom Reed's.
the sinkhole.
Yeah, the sinkhole now that we have.
Never going to fill it.
That damn sinkhole.
It was insane. Like
huge.
My mom, I was home for Easter, I think, whenever it happened.
That was
She's
about
like,
right.
She's like, "Is this by your apartment? Like, there's a 33-foot sinkhole."
It was huge.
In the middle of the
It's like,
city.
it's like something out of Ghostbusters. I'm like, what the hell is going on down here?
I thought these things
really,
happened
like,
in Florida.
Yeah, exactly. Why is it happening
sinkhole
here?
here.
Our ground's too frozen for this shit.
Oh,
Right?
thank God no cars fell in it.
Can you imagine?
Like, but there's no like surveillance footage of it. Like, how does it did it just open? Like,
I have no idea. I barely got through high school science.
Yeah.
I don't understand any of it. I really don't know.
my mind's in more of a blender right now than looking at the Wild's off-season situation.
Which is really messy.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, I guess one last question I had for you, Gorgie, is who do you got winning the cup?
Oh, man.
I know if you listen or watch this later, we're recording this on Wednesday night, so one of these teams. I mean, I think we know who's probably going to be in it.
Yeah, we think it's Florida Edmonton, right?
Yeah,
we can lean on that pretty heavily right now. It gives us an advantage. I'll put it this way: the head says Florida, the heart says Edmonton.
Yeah,
I got to tell you, I love those folks north of the border, all of them. They are terrific to work with. Whenever we do a Wild game on TV, we have a core of people we travel with that work in the truck, and obviously we've got our play-by-play and color guy, and we've got the sideline reporter. But majority of the 40, 50 people it takes to put a broadcast on are local. And I got to tell you, those folks up in Canada are the nicest folks to work with. Anything you need, they go out of their way to help. And they talk about hockey, and it's painful for them that they haven't won a cup in over 30 years. So when I say my heart wants the Oilers to win, I really do. I believe the country needs it, and I believe that McDavid needs it.
Big time. Draisaitl too.
I want those guys to have a cup. I do. Yeah. I like the coach. I like the team. I like the broadcasters up there. Terrific group of guys that run that part of it. And I want Canada to have a cup. Like, it's better for the league. Florida had their cup, and listen, I'm torn because Nate Schmidt is a guy I would qualify as a friend of mine. I've known him since he was in high school. I went to college with his aunt at St. Thomas. Nate is like a Darby Hendrickson, just one of those salt of the earth, giving, smiling, just sweethearts of a guy. It'd be his first cup. So if Florida wins it, I'll be so damn happy for Nate. But if you just ask me to handicap Florida, Edmonton, and what it would mean for the league and what it would mean for each team's fan base, I want to see Edmonton win.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Florida is just so deep, and now that Hyman's out, it's hard. Edmonton's goaltending has been good. Skinner's been good. I try to root for him.
But he's not proven like Bob.
No, and Bob is,
The head does say Florida, and they should be favored.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, Edmonton's got something going on right now, and the Hyman thing sucks.
It sucks.
He's out for the year now, and he's a big-time weapon for them. But when you have McDavid and Draisaitl, and now you've got Corey Perry doing what he's doing.
Yeah, 40 years old.
Like, what is going on here?
It's crazy.
5 of the last 6 cups he's been in. Like, this guy's 40 years old, and he's still out there impacting the game. I don't know, man. It just feels to me like Edmonton's found something. They look dead in the water all year. They look terrible during the regular season.
Especially after 4 Nations, because McDavid was clearly banged up from
They just didn't look right. Yeah. And now they've found something in these playoffs. Skinner looks unbelievable. It'll be interesting. The beauty of it is we're going to get treated to probably a 6 or 7 game cup like last year. That's going to be epic. Last year was awesome. 7 games. The momentum shifts in that series, and then the speed of the Oilers against the grit of Florida. They are definitely different hockey teams. They're built differently, and so that contrast I think will be for all of us as hockey fans fantastic. I think the people cringing right now are both in the NBA and NHL, knowing that we don't have a New York, Chicago, a big market in LA. Like, think of basketball, likely going to be OKC and Indiana. And you look at Florida and Edmonton. I don't know. From a national side, they're probably cringing on all the broadcast venues.
I just realized this last night. I believe all 4 series are 3-1.
They are. And here's hope for all the Wolves fans that are out there. And I'm one of them. I'm going to be howling later tonight when I get home. Maybe one of those, just one of the odds are at least 3 of these series, the team up 3-1 is going to end up winning.
Yeah.
There's probably maybe a chance that one series can turn around. I don't think it's Florida, Carolina. I really don't. I don't think it's Edmonton, Dallas. I think Edmonton right now is a runaway train. So then it comes down to maybe it's Indiana, New York, or maybe it's Minnesota, OKC. I think it's more likely that it's Indiana, New York, but I will say this. If the Wolves are able to win this next game, and we're sitting here an hour away from tip, it gets interesting then. It gets very interesting, and they still have a player in Anthony Edwards that at any point can be the best player on the court.
Yep. I just want to see what kind of trouble Evander Kane could get in a cup celebration.
How about these cars? Like I don't understand how he's able to do this. Even when they're on the road.
Bankrupt like twice or something.
Well, he doesn't exactly put his money away.
Like that famous photo of him in Vegas where he's on the balcony.
Unbelievable. This poor guy.
Like the most anti-hockey thing ever to flaunt money.
Well, and you're supposed to be in the team bus with your teammates, and he's showing up on these road. I get the home game thing, but on the road he's showing up in these unbelievable cars. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, pay better than, what was it, Antonio Brown showed up to training camp a couple years ago in a hot air balloon.
Yep.
You can get more extreme. Jalen Ramsey showing up in a tank or an army truck.
Oh, yeah, I remember the tank.
SWAT truck.
Anytime you're being compared to Antonio Brown, being stable probably isn't entering the conversation anytime soon.
Not in the cards.
That poor guy. He's way out there.
Well, Gorgie, thanks so much, man, for hopping in. And
Loved doing it, man. Love talking with you guys.
Glad we could talk a little off-season puck. Hey, excited for July 1st or,
the summer's going to be good.
It's going to be exciting.
New team, new name in the building.
Yep.
Kaprizov locked up. There's a lot to be excited about if you're a Wild fan here locally. And I think keep the faith. Like I felt all along like this core has what it takes. They've got young players now. Loved what I saw from Boldy this year specifically. We know what we have in favor. Zeev's coming. We've got a pretty damn good core right now. Let's see what Billy can do. Pressure's on, and that's okay. Billy knows from his experience as a manager and player, we've said all along, he knows what a Cup team looks and smells like. He's going to figure this thing out, and I think when we get to September, we're going to be juiced up and ready to roll.
Yep, 100%.
Can't wait.
Oh, so excited.
Me too.
All right, thanks, Gorg.
You got it, Jeff.